Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
A big night for President Biden as he looked to convince voters to give him 4 more years in the White House. The highlights from his State of the Union address.
Senator Katie Britt delivered the Republican response to the president's speech, what she and other GOP lawmakers had to say.
Find out why the Fulton County Board of Ethics canceled a hearing on complaints against District Attorney Fani Willis regarding the misconduct charges against her.
New York Attorney General Letitia James gets a cold reception at a New York Fire Department ceremony. See the video.
National Guard soldiers patrol New York City's busiest subway stations amid recent high-profile crime. Their presence drawing mixed reactions.
How do Americans feel about the economy now compared to 8 years ago? We hear reactions from folks in New York City.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm David Lamb, sitting in for Chris Beers.
And to begin the show, a big night for President Biden as he looked to convince voters to give him 4 more years in the White House.
The president commanded the attention of what could be his largest crowd before the November election.
NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the highlights from last night's State of the Union address.
In its final State of the Union speech before the November election, President Biden vowing to build on what he's done.
It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and the very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share.
And repeatedly taking aim at his predecessor on topics including democracy.
My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th.
The economy.
My inherited economy is on the brink.
The border.
I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country.
And even his age.
Now other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution.
Biden also got heckled by Republicans several times.
The toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh?
And at one point, responding to Republican calls for him to say the name of the Georgia student killed by an illegal immigrant.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals?
Meanwhile, on foreign policy, President Biden announced new plans to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza, called on Republican lawmakers in Congress to pass more funding for Ukraine, and vowed to stand up against China's unfair economic practices.
And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well.
Reporting from the Capitol, Iris Tao, NTD News.
As promised, former President Trump kept a close eye on Biden's address. The two candidates are expected to face off again this November. In a video pre-Rebuttal, Trump compared achievements from his own time in the White House to Biden's track record.
When I left office, we gave Joe Biden the most secure border in U.S. history. We gave him remain in Mexico, very tough to get, but I got it. Safe third agreements, the asylum ban, Title 42, 571 miles of border wall, rapid deportations, and much more.
Trump accused the Biden administration of deliberately dismantling those border policies. His criticism comes as immigration has become a top issue for voters this year.
The former president also posted real-time reactions to Biden's speech on Truth Social. He called it the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made.
And this year, Alabama Senator Katie Britt delivered the Republican rebuttal to Biden's address. Like Trump, she also focused on the issue of illegal immigration. Take a listen.
We know that President Biden didn't just create this border crisis. He invited it with 94 executive actions in his first 100 days.
Some of those, she said, included halting construction on the border wall and suspending deportations. The president was confronted by Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene when he first entered the House chamber Tuesday night. She handed him a pin with Laken Riley's face and name on it. Riley is a Georgia nursing student whose death has sparked national outrage.
She was brutally murdered by one of the millions of illegal border crossers President Biden chose to release into our homeland.
During his address, the president insisted America's economy is stronger than ever. Republicans took issue with that messaging.
I'll never forget stopping at a gas station in Fulton County one evening. The gentleman working the counter told me that after retiring, he had to pick up a job in his 70s so that he didn't have to choose between going hungry or going without his medication.
Since Joe Biden took office, overall prices are up nearly 18%. It cost our families $12,000 more per year just to maintain the same quality of life that we had under President Trump.
NTD spoke to Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania after the State of the Union. Perry described Biden's speech as detached from reality. He pushed back against Biden's claim of reducing the federal budget deficit, saying the nation's debt is actually set to reach $35 trillion by May.
I felt like I was being yelled at by an angry old man who just figured if he yelled loud enough and said it enough times that we would agree.
The White House has pushed back against the rebuttal speech, criticizing Britt for not supporting a bipartisan border and foreign aid deal in the Senate.
A Gold Star father was arrested during President Biden's State of the Union address yesterday. Steve Nikui was charged with a misdemeanor for interrupting the speech after Capitol Police warned him to stop.
Year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up. The biggest increase in history. It was then.
He yelled Abby-gate and United States Marines after Biden said America is safer today than the year that he took office.
Nikui's son was killed in the 2021 suicide bombing attack on Abby-gate during the U.S. evacuation from Afghanistan. Nikui was a guest of GOP Representative Brian Mast of Florida.
A Capitol Police spokesperson told media that a misdemeanor charge of illegally disrupting Congress carries a $50 fine and is typically resolved without going to court. Joining us now to discuss the State of the Union address is Mike Leon, Policy and Strategy Director at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. Mike, welcome back. Great to see you. Now, was Biden's message one that will connect with voters, would you say?
Oh, good to see you, Steph, as always. You know, first off, in that package I just played, I'm glad that the Marine's father there will get off with just like a small fine or something like that. Because if you want to attack President Biden, that's one way to do it. The foreign policy mishmash has really cost the Biden administration. But onto his speech real quick. I thought the speech overall was pretty good for him. If you've looked at the way he has been speaking out in public over the last few months when he's done pressers or he's done it from the White House itself, the press conferences, he's gotten a little bit confused. He's kind of wandered off track, and then the reporters are shouting questions, so he has to come back and try to give an answer. And sometimes I've heard from people that are working the administration that they don't want him to go back to the podium to answer that. So I thought yesterday he was composed at times, even with the different shouting matches that happened. And I think the biggest takeaway for me was the president tried to echo this message of bipartisanship. And look no further than when he started speaking about the immigration bill. Steph, you and I have spoken about this. The camera panned to Senator James Lankford. And we've mentioned this. Senator Lankford is extremely conservative. He drafted this bill with Senator Chris Murphy and Kyrsten Sinema. They thought this bill would solve and address a lot of the problems that are happening at our U.S. southern border. And President Biden said, let's do something about it instead of waiting for a potential Trump administration. And he even asked the former president to join him in this. I thought that was really interesting and moving. But overall, you know, the speech, I mean, do you want me to give it a letter grade? I mean, I would put it, B-, something like that. He spoke about some of the key issues that voters are talking about in these primaries. And
he, as you mentioned about the Senate border bill, it was a bipartisan bill, and yet it did fail in the Senate. And so it's not as though all Democrats were supporting it either, as far as I can tell.
Right.
But moving on to the economy, that's another top issue for voters. How would you rate his pitch on the economy and the solutions that he put forward?
Well, I mean, again, if you're going to go line item by line item and talk about some of the things that he has mentioned, inflation has gone down since he's taken office. But again, when it first started, they were saying it was transitory, some of the issues, as I've heard from members of Congress, and that the messaging was all whacked, right? Like, you have to meet your issues head on and address and acknowledge that they are issues before you're actually able to solve them. In the initial stages, the Biden administration was not dealing with inflation properly. Unemployment, he mentioned, was at a 50-year low. That is true. But again, as I've mentioned on other shows across NTD and on our show specifically, job growth in some sectors is stagnant or declining. And I know we're going to get into Katie Britt's response in a second, but like, job growth in certain sectors like healthcare, like government, are rising. But if you look in other sectors like media and technology, the ones that we're in, job decline is down. We've seen companies in Silicon Valley make thousands of layoffs, from Spotify to Meta. So there are thousands of people that are feeling that may be not part of that unemployment rate number. So I thought when he spoke about the economic issues, again, he reiterated some of the things that his plans have addressed. He talked about the cost of drugs and in terms of insulin and what Medicare is doing. So I thought he hit on some of those things. But again, I would encourage people to fact check some of that stuff in real time to see if those numbers are actually factual. And in terms of with voter messaging, like we talked about the other day, Steph, voters go to the gas pump, they see the price, they check the price from the year before. They see their grocery bill, they check the price, they see the price from the year before. It's going up, unfortunately.
Right, and he has been criticized since his speech for perhaps what some people have said, trivializing the issue of the rising cost of living. In his speech, speaking about the cost of a packet of chips, or as opposed to some of the other things that are hitting people more that they can't escape from. They need to buy gas, need to buy food, to put on the table. So there are other costs there, but. Looking further, we heard earlier just the reporting on the interaction between Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Of course, the border, again, is a big issue. Do you think that was an inflection point, or, did that speak to the voters in some way? Who do you think came out on top there?
Well, I mean, it's such a... How do I put this? Like, look, what happened with Laken Riley, if you don't know the story of this University of Georgia student who went jogging and her brutal murder, it's absolutely terrible. Like, it's legitimately terrible. There's no other way around it. And again, this person that was in this country illegally committed this act. Marjorie Taylor Greene shining light on it, and some other GOP representatives there that wore patches. Kudos to them for doing that. Now, look, the statistical data is just not on their side with the amount of immigrants or migrants that are here either waiting asylum trials or here illegally committing crimes, right? U.S.-born residents are more than 3 times likely to commit crimes than a migrant. That's not Mike Leon saying this. This is the University of Wisconsin-Madison study that was put out recently around this issue. So I think you can talk about both things while addressing one is a problem, like what we saw with Laken Riley. How do we address that? And President Biden, again, said in his speech, let's do something about the border. This Senate plan that they had, if we revitalize it, it would put more agents out there for enforcement. It would
Certainly.
put more judges on the immigration court to be able to deal with some of these issues, so we can get the backlog of people that, like that person that maybe was in this country illegally, we could get those folks back to their country of origin, and they wouldn't be here committing crimes like we don't want them to.
And certainly, I wish we could dig into this further. That is such an interesting topic and a really important one right at this moment. But that's all we have time for. Mike Leon, Policy and Strategy Director at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steph.
A New York judge denied former President Trump's bid to delay the $83 million judgment in his civil defamation case yesterday.
Trump has until Monday to post a bond or pay the total amount so he can appeal. Last month, the former president asked the judge to throw out the verdict and want a new trial.
Trump attorney Alina Habba submitted a motion on Wednesday asking for a stay until 3 days after her post-trial motions are resolved. Judge Lewis Kaplan said Trump's team waited 25 days to seek a delay and hasn't shown how paying before a ruling could cause irreparable injury. Kaplan is still weighing Trump's request for a reduced bond.
Trump also faces a March 25th deadline on a more than $450 million judgment in a civil fraud case. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the latest in Trump's ongoing lawsuits.
A judge in Trump's hush money case ruled Thursday the former president will be given the names of jurors at his upcoming trial in New York. The judge says only prosecutors and Trump's lawyers will be allowed to know the addresses of jurors' homes and workplaces. The ruling applies not only to jurors seated for the trial, but also prospective jurors who may be summoned. Jury selection is set to start March 25th. In Trump's classified documents case, special counsel Jack Smith is pushing back on Trump's bid to have the case thrown out. Smith argued in a court filing Thursday the case he's prosecuting against Trump for allegedly mishandling classified documents is starkly different from the one the Justice Department declined to bring against President Biden. Trump's team argue numerous other public figures investigated for potentially mishandling classified records, including Biden, had either not been prosecuted or faced much less serious criminal cases. Smith's team argues Biden alerted authorities, consented to searches of his homes, and willingly returned documents. District Judge Eileen Cannon will hear arguments next Monday on several of Trump's motions to dismiss. That includes the former president's claim of entitlement to the documents under the Presidential Records Act. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
The Fulton County Board of Ethics canceled hearing 2 complaints against Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis yesterday. It says it has no jurisdiction over the matter. The board says Willis is an elected state constitutional officer in the judicial branch of state government. It says any ethics complaint against her would be under the exclusive jurisdiction of the State Ethics Commission.
Fulton County residents Stephen Kramer and Gregory Mantle filed the complaints. The pair were independently investigating the district attorney's finances after allegations of misconduct and an alleged improper relationship were made public early this year. The ongoing saga between former President Donald Trump and New York AG Letitia James continues. The venue this time was the New York City Fire Department's promotion ceremony yesterday. James was booed at the event, with some shouting, "Trump, Trump, Trump."
Oh, come on, we're in a house of God. First, simmer down. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for getting it out of your system.
James was there to honor the New York Fire Department's first African-American woman chaplain.
Despite James urging the crowd to simmer down, some continued booing and chanting Trump during her speech.
Department of Chief John Hodgins criticized the crowd's actions, saying the ceremony should focus on honoring promoted members without distractions.
James filed a lawsuit last year against former President Trump. It alleged he committed fraud and inflated the value of his assets.
Last month's ruling barred the former president from doing business in New York for 3 years and fined him over $350 million. Coming up, a tale of 2 budgets. House Republicans beat President Biden to the punch, approving a 2025 budget plan yesterday, with Biden set to release his Monday. What's in the plan, and reactions from Democrats.
New findings from a federal investigation into the collapse of a Florida condo that killed almost 100 people in 2021. We have an update in just a moment here on NTD News Today.
Art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shen
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth, without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now, Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always cheesing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
We've moved so far away from the Constitution that in many ways we don't even recognize it.
In Hillsdale College's most popular online course, Constitution 101, you'll learn the principles of American government, absolutely free, at learnfromhillsdale.org. When you sign up, you'll enjoy 12 easy-to-follow lessons and learn to separate truth from fiction regarding the Constitution. To start your journey discovering the Constitution free of charge, go to learnfromhillsdale.org today.
Join us on NTD Good Morning because we want you to stay informed.
Kickstart your morning with the latest you missed overnight.
Right, and don't forget that inspiration.
Absolutely, so let's shine some light on the good news too.
Tune in every weekday morning to NTD News.
House Republicans got the jump on President Biden by approving a new budget proposal yesterday. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the plan, which the Budget Committee passed just hours before the State of the Union.
The plan aims to balance the federal budget within a decade. It would cut trillions in federal spending in such areas as green energy subsidies and student loan forgiveness while reducing taxes. House Speaker Mike Johnson issued a statement after its adoption in a 19-15 party line vote, saying, House Republicans have been long sounding the alarm on the fiscal challenges facing our nation, and this budget plan takes steps to put the nation on the track to fiscal sanity. Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington says the budget plan would reduce the federal debt, now over $34 trillion, and create a $44 billion budget surplus in fiscal 2034, while stirring economic growth by lowering taxes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the facts are irrefutable. Our deficit spending is out of control, our national debt's unsustainable, and the fiscal state of the union is in rapid decline.
Arrington said the budget would cut just over $14 trillion in spending over the next decade. It would eliminate programs long targeted by Republicans, including Biden's student loan bailout, green energy subsidies, and expanded funding for the Internal Revenue Service. Democrats heaped scorn on the plan, saying the cuts proposed by Republicans would gut bedrock government programs, including Medicaid and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP.
With trillions of dollars in cuts to programs that help the working and middle class, this Republican budget would rip the American dream away from hardworking families.
The White House issued a statement saying the budget sells out those hardworking Americans to rich special interests. Democrats pointed to Biden's budget, due to be released on Monday, as a more favorable alternative. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And the House passed a bill yesterday requiring the detention of any illegal immigrant who committed burglary or theft.
The measure introduced by House Republicans is dubbed the Laken-Riley Act. It's named after a Georgia student who was allegedly killed by a man who authorities say entered the country illegally. The bill passed with a 251 to 170 majority, with 37 Democrats joining all Republicans present to vote in favor. Republicans have blamed the Biden administration for encouraging dangerous criminals to cross the U.S. border.
The measure was approved hours before President Biden delivered his State of the Union address. Many Republicans were seen at the address wearing badges in honor of Laken Riley. Georgia Congressman Mike Collins said he invited Riley's parents to the event, but they chose not to attend.
President Biden is looking to expand a Medicare drug negotiation program. How would this impact the price of health care and pharmaceuticals? For insight, earlier I spoke with Anne-Marie Buerkle. She's a former representative and former commissioner with the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. Now, what impact could drug price negotiations have on affordability of health care for average Americans?
David, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's something that's so important to me because I started out my professional career as a nurse. And right now, the country, most Americans are concerned about their cost of health care as well as the cost of pharmacy. And so whether it's the president or it's the House or the Senate talking about fixing drugs and price negotiations, I think really we need to understand right now there's a free market choice, and they're called PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. And with that entity, these businesses negotiate the cost of drugs for healthcare plans. They are the free market in action, and they do keep down the cost of drugs.
So this effort is unlikely to pass Congress, and lawmakers' healthcare interests have moved to regulating pharmacy benefit managers, as you mentioned. How effective is that in moderating drug prices, and why is Biden pushing for direct negotiation instead?
Well, unfortunately, I think what the president and other members of the Congress are pushing for is government involvement in whether it's healthcare, and in this case, in the cost of drugs. And I think most of your listeners are smart enough to know that when the government gets involved, what happens is the prices go up and the system becomes less efficient. Again, the PBMs that are in the current system, which are under attack, really is the free market solution to keeping the cost of drugs down. And I'll just add one more thing. Whenever a legislator thinks about whether he's going to introduce a piece of legislation, as Republicans, at the very least, they should always ask, will this move empower the free market? And if it doesn't, if it puts the thumb of the government on that scale, then any Republican should really back away from it.
Critics say the whole healthcare system is broken. What else can Congress do to address this, and what is likely?
You're so right, David. So many Americans, again, are so concerned about healthcare and the cost of healthcare. Congress can take some direct steps right now to address some of these issues. Number one, empower and strengthen PBMs. Don't try to diminish their power. Number two, look at hospital billing and look at how hospitals, when I trained as a nurse, I worked for a small, it was 400-bed community hospital. That hospital now is part of a much larger hospital care system. The way hospitals have merged and really turned into these big conglomerates, that's driving up the cost of healthcare, and it's something Congress should really investigate and look at hospital billing and some of the dishonest practices that they're doing.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for your insight and for joining us.
Always a pleasure, David. Thank you so much for having me.
National Guard soldiers are patrolling New York City's busiest subway stations amid recent high-profile crime. Is New York Governor Kathy Hochul making the right decision? NTD's Andrew Thomas has reactions from New Yorkers and legal analysis.
Governor Kathy Hochul says she will deploy 750 National Guard members, 250 state troopers, and transit officers to help the New York City Police Department check bags at subway entrances. Some say their presence is necessary.
Just the way people react to stuff. People just fighting over seats. They could be slashed. The other day they slashed the conductor, and that's not cool. People should be going to work, relax, and, taking the train. And even our tourists that come over here, they should be safe.
Others say bag checks are inconvenient and potentially profiling.
Sometimes when I'm in a hurry and I have a bag, I don't like to be stopped, so then I try to see, did they stop me? If they're going to stop somebody else that doesn't look like me. But in general, I hope they do what's right.
Some legal experts say the National Guard presence is a mistake.
I think it might be a wrong read because most people are uncomfortable with powerful artillery, military uniforms. That tends to signal things that we often see on television for countries that may be less developed than the United States.
But subway rider Cheryl Ann Harper is on board with the inspections.
You know, yes, it is random, and we need it. And if you don't have a problem, what's the problem? Just open your bag. You know, we have to do it at the movies anyway, you know, because when you go to the movies, you have to open up your bag to make sure you don't have a firearm so that you don't shoot up the movie theater. I do it all the time, okay?
The governor's effort to address violent crime on the subway includes a legislative proposal to ban people from the train for 3 years if they're convicted of assaulting a subway passenger. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Former Congressman George Santos announced yesterday that he is running for Congress again. He was expelled from the House last year and is facing federal charges. Santos made the announcement during President Biden's State of the Union address, which he attended. Santos said on X that he would challenge Republican Nick LaLota for New York's 1st District.
Congressman LaLota responded to the announcement, calling Santos a pathological liar who stole an election. Santos was kicked out of Congress last year after being charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and making false statements. And a 21-year-old college junior won the GOP primary against incumbent state representative George Cleveland in North Carolina. Wyatt Gable is also feeling good about his chances in November, being in a typically red district. Here's Gable describing his platform's priorities on Fox News.
Big 3 things, focusing on education, like simple things, home economics, shop, carpentry, so students prepared. The Chinese Communist Party owns thousands of acres in North Carolina, so I want to use eminent domain to buy that all back. And then just smart spending.
Gable says an email he sent to his state representative during the COVID pandemic on the lockdowns and loss of freedoms inspired him to run. He never got a reply and says he didn't want anyone else to feel that way.
The young politician hopes that other young people will be inspired to join the GOP and perhaps run themselves.
Gable will square off against Democratic candidate Carmen Spicer in the November general election.
A United Airlines jet headed for Japan made an emergency landing in Los Angeles yesterday. The jetliner lost a tire shortly after taking off from San Francisco. Video shows the plane losing one of the 6 tires on its left side just seconds after takeoff. The tire landed in an employee parking lot at San Francisco International Airport. It then smashed into a car, shattering its back window, and broke through a fence. It finally came to a stop in a neighboring parking lot.
The airline said the Boeing 777 is designed to land safely with missing or damaged tires. After the landing, the plane was towed away. United said it would move passengers to a different plane for the rest of their trip to Japan.
The flight carried 235 passengers and a crew of 14. An airport spokesman said no one was injured. The Federal Aviation Administration will investigate the incident.
Ready for takeoff, the U.S. military announced today that V-22 Osprey aircraft are cleared for flight. The grounding order was imposed after several fatal crashes. Naval Air Systems Command grounded the Osprey fleet over 3 months ago. This followed a fatal crash in November that killed 8 Special Operations airmen. It was the 4th deadly incident in less than 2 years.
The Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy are expected to resume flying the aircraft over the next several weeks.
Military officials said Wednesday the Osprey are safe to fly following an investigation, but they provided few details about what caused the aircraft to go down. It's unclear if the fleet will be subject to any operation limitations.
The Washington Post reporting that the Navy demoted Congressman Ronny Jackson in 2022 after the release of a blistering report from the Defense Department about his conduct while serving as White House physician. According to the DoD Inspector General, Jackson was accused of drinking on the job, acting inappropriately, and frequently screaming at subordinates. When Jackson retired in 2019, he was a 1-star Rear Admiral.
The demotion dropped him down to captain, according to a pair of U.S. officials. Jackson was a top White House doctor under Presidents Obama and Trump.
He now serves as a Republican member of the House of Representatives from Texas and sits on the House Armed Services Committee.
When the DoD report came out in 2021, Jackson responded by calling it a politically motivated attack.
Federal investigators have an update on possible causes of the 2021 condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. 93 people died under a mountain of rubble when the building came down in June 2021. Investigators identified hundreds of possible points of failure in the building.
They said when the towers were finished in 1981, the structural design wasn't up to code, particularly the pool deck and tower columns. Both of those are possible causes of the disaster.
According to investigators, the deck collapsed at least 4 minutes before the rest of the building. The columns supporting the tower's southern edge could have also failed, triggering the collapse.
Investigators are still narrowing down about a dozen theories. Their final report is expected next year. Up ahead, a maritime aid corridor is expected to start operating between Cyprus and Gaza this weekend. Palestinians in the enclave are increasingly desperate for food and other provisions.
The U.S. economy added 275,000 jobs last month, and the unemployment rate rose to 3.9%. We'll have the details when we return.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. But a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
When I drink it, the first thing was I feel the warmth in my tummy. It's kind of like gently radiating out, a kind of a very comforting warmth. And it was really good, actually. I felt much better. I did feel, actually, an effect. And I find that it is actually better when I take it regularly.
It's actually steamed and dried 9 times. And so it's really, the essence is really extracted.
Then the second time I tried it really like on an empty stomach and just 2 teaspoons of it, and over a few times. And wow, there was a big difference, because suddenly I could feel, wow, I was very good energized. I didn't have to eat. I could work outside in the garden for a couple of hours, and I still felt very well. And I was impressed by that. So I think it's a good product.
I'm Arian Pastar in South America, Brazil, and we are NTD News.
Joining us now is NTD Business host Don Ma to give us the latest from the financial world.
Don, thanks for joining us. So what's new?
Okay, so just a couple of things I wanted to talk to you guys about today, and one of them is the big jobs report that was released earlier this morning, and as well as something that hasn't happened to U.S. credit scores in over a decade. Okay, so let me start with the jobs report. So U.S. economy added 275,000 jobs last month in February, and this is a great number. It's higher than expectations. So it seems like U.S. job growth is accelerating, is remaining strong, and this is keeping the labor market from going into a recession. It's buoying the U.S. economy from going into a downturn. And so despite a rash of high-profile layoffs last year, employers are generally holding on to their workers. And this is good news for anyone who is part of any workforce. But this report, on the other hand, is not all good news. The unemployment rate increased last month. It's standing at 3.9%, and this is a 2-year high. But despite it being a 2-year high, historically speaking, when you compare it to before, it's still relatively low. And employment gains in February were largely concentrated in 3 areas: healthcare, hotels and restaurants, and government. So healthcare in that sector added 67,000 jobs, and then government employment rose by 52,000 jobs last month. And finally, wage growth as well came in modest and well under expectations. Just a brief overview for this.
Yeah, and especially at this important time as everybody's watching the economy and jobs. That's one point that the Biden administration has touted, especially last night, jobs growth. But what's happening with credit scores?
Yes, and that's what I was talking about. U.S. consumer credit scores are starting to buckle, it seems like. The national average fell as of October, according to the latest data from FICO, and this is an analytics company that evaluates the strength of borrowers. This drop is the first in a decade. It's potentially another sign that some Americans, at least, are feeling financial stress. The FICO report noted that the high effects of interest rates and persistent inflation may be starting to weigh on consumers, especially those already struggling to manage their finances. FICO said that the drop in credit scores in late 2023 was driven by an increase in Americans missing payments and also rising debt levels. And the last time credit scores fell was more than a year ago, back in 2013.
Yeah, wow, Don, that's a big issue. I mean, I know with FICO score, people are trying to make ends meet, to get out loans and buy houses and whatnot. So thank you so much, Don, for breaking this down for us.
My pleasure.
Cheers. Thanks, Don.
According to a CNN poll last month, Americans feel slightly better about the economy, but overall views remain bleak. About 35% of Americans say things are going well in the country, while many others say times are tough. I asked people in New York City for their thoughts.
With high prices and cost of living, Americans are definitely feeling a sting in their wallets and bank accounts. Now we spoke to people in New York City to see what they think about the state of the economy. What do you think about the prices and the state of the economy right now in the U.S.?
It's a little rough now. We got to get the right people in place so we can make changes.
Honestly, I feel like it's just getting worse day by day. It's just getting worse. The generation's getting worse. The kids, and I don't know, they're getting told like I don't know. Like when I was younger, it's like I was worried about toys, going to Toys R Us and everything, and now kids are worried about going to like vape shops, smoke shops.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I went to the grocery store the other day and I got like 2 cans of soup because I was just feeling a little under the weather, and it was like $20 for 2 small cans of soup. I don't know how people are doing it because I know personally I'm struggling. I'm vegetarian too, and a trip to the grocery store is like $70. I don't know what is costing that much, but yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
I really see it with gas. I mean, where I live, gas is still ridiculously expensive, way more so than when Trump was in office. But I mean, I think food prices are getting better, and gas is lowering a little bit. It's just still way too high.
It's really hard to find a job, but I'm still trying to find one. Yeah, it's just not easy out here to find a job.
How's the economy back then in your eyes?
I don't know. I feel like everything was better. Like the gas prices were better, food prices weren't as much as they are now and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
With people trying to make ends meet, there's a portion of Americans that are working more than one job. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they've added 353,000 jobs to the U.S. economy in January. Reporting in New York City, David Lamb, NTD News.
And now for a shift in gears, we have some short headlines from Italy and other European countries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she expects a maritime aid corridor to start between Cyprus and Gaza this weekend.
The EU chief said a pilot run of food aid could be leaving Cyprus as early as today. A ship belonging to Spain's Open Arms will make the voyage to test the sea corridor.
Von der Leyen said the EU, the US, and the United Arab Emirates and other involved partner countries are launching the sea corridor to deliver large quantities of aid.
She called the situation in Gaza a humanitarian catastrophe.
The U.S. Embassy in Russia says extremists have imminent plans for an attack in Moscow. The embassy said people should avoid concerts and crowds and be aware of their surroundings.
The warning came hours after Russian security services said they foiled an ISIS plot to attack a synagogue. Russia's Federal Security Service said an ISIS cell was operating in Russia's Kaluga region south of Moscow. The security service says the cell is part of the Afghan arm of the terror group.
The U.S. Embassy gave no further details about the nature of the threat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced Thursday the appointment of a former top general as Ukraine's ambassador to the UK.
Valery Zaluzhny is widely seen as a national hero for overseeing Ukraine's war effort throughout Russia's full-scale invasion.
Zelenskyy made the announcement in his nightly video address following a meeting with the UK's Secretary of Defense. The Ukrainian president also congratulated Sweden on its official entry into NATO.
Ukraine has not had an ambassador in Britain since July 2023.
Today, I also approved the candidate for the position of our country's ambassador to the UK. General Valery Zaluzhny told me that this is the direction he would like to take: diplomacy. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine sent a corresponding request for agreement. Our alliance with Britain should only get stronger.
A new trial began today for two American men accused of killing an Italian plainclothes officer during a botched sting operation. Italy's highest court ordered a new trial last year. It ruled that their guilt hadn't been proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Finnegan Lee Elder and Gabrielle Nataliorth were teenagers at the time of the 2019 murder. The friends from California were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The sentences were reduced to 24 years for Elder and 22 years for Nataliorth on appeal.
Prosecutors alleged Elder stabbed the officer 11 times after trying to buy drugs from an informant. Nataliorth allegedly helped him hide the knife in their hotel room. Coming up after the Oscars are over, Hollywood's elites head to the governor's ball for an exquisite feast. What's on the menu? We take you behind the scenes for a mouth-watering look. That story and more after the short break.
According to Marx, everything must be seen through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. Our property rights have continued to get weaker. The threat of these takings is no longer just for public use, but also for better use. This means that the government can't force the exchange of property from one private citizen to another private citizen. This is nowhere near the Founding Fathers' intentions. We now have a record share of Americans that have never been married, I being one of them. In fact, the median age of a first marriage has never been higher. Now you may be thinking this is only affecting single adults. Well, not exactly. According to Pew Research, 1 in 4 parents living with their child are unmarried. And let's take a look at how many children are currently living with either one parent or no parent.
One in 5 children worldwide are faced with the reality of living without food. No family dinners, no special treats, not enough energy to play. All around the world, hunger is affecting children's physical and mental health. Toddlers are suffering from acute malnutrition, which stunts their growth. Kids are forced to drop out of school so they can help support their families. Conflict, inflation, and climate have ignited the worst famine in our lifetime. And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting getfedupnow.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit getfedupnow.org.
I'm going to bring you the most accurate and insightful information on NTD Newsroom. Join me weekdays right here on NTD News.
This Sunday will mark the 96th Annual Academy Awards ceremony, the movie industry's biggest night. Audiences can once again tune in for the glamorous event on TV.
What you won't see is the massive after-party. For the 65th time, Hollywood stars will convene at the Governor's Ball for an exquisite culinary experience. Let's take a look.
Movie stars and fans alike look forward to the Oscars every year. After all the statues get passed out and countless photos are taken on the red carpet, there's still one thing left to do for Hollywood's elite. They head to the Governor's Ball for a sumptuous feast. World-renowned chef Wolfgang Puck returns to cater the event for his 30th year. He describes some of the international delicacies on the menu.
We have a chinois buffet with Peking duck. We have a cut buffet from London, because in England the Sunday roast is an important part. So we have roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, and fish and chips, and English trifle. So then we have our traditional Spargo food, you know, all the different pastas and risottos, garganelli with fresh shrimp.
But that's not all his team is serving up to the film industry's finest.
We have paella, we have rack of lamb, we have the Wagyu steak. I mean, there is something for everybody, not to speak all the fish like the fresh black bass Veracruz style, which is one of my favorites. So that's gonna be a feast.
Of course, the wine will also be of the highest quality.
It takes a lot of craftsmanship. We have very limited quantities, and we're using a very specific blend based on very ancient Chardonnay, vintage Chardonnay, with just a little bit of fresh Pinot Noir, very juicy, vinified as rosé. So the whole profile itself is so unique.
And whatever remains from the feast will be offered to the less fortunate.
We're going to give the food to the homeless. Whatever is left over will not get thrown away. We send it right downtown for the homeless.
The Academy Awards, officially known as the Oscars, celebrates cinematic achievements. It'll take place on March 10th in Los Angeles.
In more light news, if you want to deepen your bond with your baby, consider singing to them. Gina Marie from Strong Mind and Body has some tips.
Singing familiar songs to a distressed baby brings comfort. According to a recent experiment, it's better than unfamiliar songs or expressive talking. Singing to babies plays an important role in creating the parent-child relationship. A repertoire of familiar songs sung together can be a source of comfort in moments of distress. An experiment was conducted in Canada with 136 babies, approximately 10 months. They were videoed as a parent provided comfort. They sang a familiar song, an unfamiliar song, or talked expressively. Each parent was asked to play with the child for 2 minutes, then present a blank face to the child for 1 minute. Then reunite with the child for 2 minutes by means of singing or speaking. The recordings showed that when the parents sang a song that was familiar, the babies paid more attention. This was especially so in the first 30 seconds. They not only smiled more but also showed less distress such as crying, frowning, and frustration. The second best option was an unfamiliar song. The least effective was speaking even with much expression. Making sounds in response to an infant's distress is a common response. It's a supplement to physical closeness. Singing to infants is a universal human practice. Typically, songs are more stable in pitch, level, and tempo. Speech, on the other hand, is highly variable in form and content. Similarly, using music as a source of comfort is a universal human characteristic at all ages. Toddlers typically sing spontaneously when playing alone or going to sleep on their own. Infants are surprisingly good at remembering tunes. Newborns respond to music they heard while in the womb, and 2 months old recognize tunes. At 6 months, a baby will respond to a familiar tune even when it's presented at a different pitch. Familiar songs have a particular social significance for infants and, as you can see, have a positive effect on their well-being.
If you have any news tips or feedback for the show, please feel free to email us at news.today@ntd.com.
And be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life.
And we just had a new baby. And then all of a sudden, within a day or two, she's on life support and fighting for her life.
Then I knew something was pretty wrong. A little less than a week after I came home, I couldn't breathe. That's when we decided to go to the hospital. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
This could not happen without monthly donations from friends like you. Your sustained support helps fund life-saving research that leads to medical breakthroughs, like those that gave Jen a second chance at life. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, and we urgently need your help to save lives. Go to helpheart.org or call now to become a monthly donor today. Your donation of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, will make a difference through prevention, early detection, treatments, and cures that help save lives.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Please go to helpheart.org or call now with your donation of just $19 a month. Join our community of monthly donors, and you'll get this limited edition t-shirt you can wear to show you're helping save lives.
One simple act today can save your life or the life of a loved one.
So please, call or go to helpheart.org now to help save lives.
With Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Don't worry, help is on the way. With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately, and batteries never need charging.
I was having a stroke, and I was scared to death.
If it weren't for Life Alert, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Life Alert is a lifesaver.
My husband is alive because of Life Alert.
Life Alert is the lifesaver to keep me out of
assisted living.
Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-565-4808. That's 1-800-565-4808. Call now, 1-800-565-4808.
Welcome to NTD News Today.
Here are today's top stories.
President Biden giving what could be the most important speech of his political career. We dive deep into the president's State of the Union speech and reactions.
Illegal immigration, a hot topic at yesterday's State of the Union address. Republicans used a Black Lives Matter slogan to push President Biden to mention the death of nursing student Laken Riley. Arian Pastar brings us the highlights.
Find out why the Fulton County Board of Ethics canceled a hearing on complaints against District Attorney Fani Willis.
National Guard soldiers patrol New York City's busiest subway stations amid recent high-profile crime. Their presence drawing mixed reactions.
Chinese combat troops fed on American pork. Major meat suppliers in China reportedly hoarding rations for the regime's military, all made possible through a U.S. subsidiary.
A centuries-old Polish dance wins a spot on UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. On national holidays or local occasions, citizens are invited to dance in the streets.
This is NTD News Today, live from our NTD Global Headquarters. Here are Stephania Cox and Chris Beers.
Hi, I'm David Lamb, sitting in for Chris Beers.
And to begin the show, a big night for President Biden as he looked to convince voters to give him 4 more years in the White House.
The president commanded the attention of what could be his largest crowd before the November election.
NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the highlights from last night's State of the Union address.
In its final State of the Union speech before the November election, President Biden vowing to build on what he's done.
It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share.
And repeatedly taking aim at his predecessor on topics including democracy.
My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th.
The economy.
My inherited economy is on the brink.
The border.
I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country.
And even his age.
Now other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution.
Biden also got heckled by Republicans several times.
The toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh?
And at one point, responding to Republican calls for him to say the name of the Georgia student killed by an illegal immigrant.
Laken Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals?
Meanwhile, on foreign policy, President Biden announced new plans to get more humanitarian aid into Gaza, called on Republican lawmakers in Congress to pass more funding for Ukraine, and vowed to stand up against China's unfair economic practices.
And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well.
Reporting from the Capitol, Iris Tao, NTD News.
As promised, former President Trump kept a close eye on Biden's address. The two candidates are expected to face off again this November. In a video pre-Rebuttal, Trump compared achievements from his own time in the White House to Biden's track record.
When I left office, we gave Joe Biden the most secure border in U.S. history. We gave him remain in Mexico, very tough to get, but I got it. Safe third agreements, the asylum ban, Title 42, 571 miles of border wall, rapid deportations, and much more.
Trump accused the Biden administration of deliberately dismantling those border policies. His criticism comes as immigration has become a top issue for voters this year.
The former president also posted real-time reactions to Biden's speech on Truth Social. He called it the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made.
And joining us now to discuss last night's State of the Union address is former Obama campaign director and now a candidate for the Georgia Senate, Robin Byro. Welcome, Robin. What do you think of his speech? Did Biden make his case well to voters last night?
He did. I thought he did a pretty outstanding job. It was an hour and 39 minutes at my last count. And I think it resonated. He had a tough case to make. He had to prove that he's actually tough on the border. And right now the border is actually in a crisis. But he made the case that we have a border bill out there. We need Republicans to work with us to get border security. It actually worked to his favor, I would argue, that Marjorie Taylor Greene had an outburst. And he used that to pivot to say, pass the border bill. We do have a crisis at the border.
Yeah, he seemed to suggest that Laken Riley's death is an outlier and not many Americans have lost their lives due to the border crisis. But we also know that this chaos is intensifying and spreading, not to mention the fentanyl that's trafficked largely across the border is still the highest cause of death among young adults in the U.S. Should Biden have spoken more about this, and how do you think he fared in terms of that?
I think he did a decent job talking about the border. It is actually one of the #1 concerns of voters across both parties. So it is more than time for him to address it. We need a stronger border. Frankly, look, I was Obama's campaign director. We built hundreds of miles of border wall under President Obama. So I've always actually been in favor of a border wall, even under Trump's presidency. I think it's something that we as Democrats need to champion. I locked my front door at night. It's the same concept. So, but look, I think that Biden had a miss here when it came to the Israel-Hamas war. I don't think he spoke nearly enough about that and didn't come off nearly as strong as I would have hoped.
And of course, there were protests outside of the speech beforehand, protesting his stance on the Israel-Hamas war. We're not sure if that's what contributed to the speech starting late or not, but there was quite the kerfuffle, and that was expected, I suppose. But do you think he should have spoken directly to those protests, or how do you hope that he would have handled it?
Just stronger. It was actually, there was nothing memorable that he said about what his position was, other than a two-state system. That's the only thing that was my only takeaway from what he said about the Israel-Hamas war. We need him to be much stronger on that. But by and large, I thought he did a good job. He especially making the case about protecting IVF and women's rights. So he did fair on the economy. Overall, I give him an 8 out of 10.
Okay, good to understand your perspective on that. And I do want to touch on those two topics that you just mentioned. There was a moment where Biden seemed to almost warn the Supreme Court justices that were in attendance, 6 of them there, regarding Roe versus Wade. And there have been some commentary on that, suggesting that, especially from the Republican side, that was inappropriate, perhaps disrespectful towards the justices. Do you think that could have potentially hurt Biden politically, or how do you think that came off?
I don't think that that's going to hurt any more so than the Republican outbursts that Joe Wilson made the norm now, I guess. I guess every State of the Union now we're just going to expect Republican outbursts. So no, I don't think it's going to hurt. I think he needed to address it, frankly. Women all across the country are upset about this. They needed reassurance that he's going to do something to protect women's reproductive rights. He made the case and he spoke directly to the Supreme Court justices. Frankly, I like that.
And just on the economy, Biden did make the case that he's trying to reduce costs in various ways. He spoke about his loan forgiveness program, trying to cap drug prices, helping plans to help with a tax cut or rebate on mortgages, various things he's trying to do. But of course, critics have said that they think the administration has created the inflation that we're now all grappling with at the moment. And of course, the recent polls have suggested that voters feel as though the economy was better under Trump than it is now. Given this, do you think that his message will sit well with voters in terms of the economy?
Voters are skeptical of Joe Biden's economy right now, which makes it all the more flummoxing why he's using Bidenomics as his main campaign strategy here. Inflation is at a worldwide low at 3% versus other countries at 7 and 9 and even higher percentages, but still it's 3%, and we're paying more for every product. And it's a tough sell to Americans that yes, you're paying more, but it's not as much as everybody else. That's still not going to cut the mustard. But he did make a strong case for some of the only really new program that I heard was his $400 a month rebate for new home buyers for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
That is a program that will appeal to young.
Oh, we've lost you there. Okay, and the connection just broke there, but we'll have to stop there. Thank you so much, Robin Byro, former Obama campaign director and now candidate for the Georgia Senate. Thank you so much. And former President Donald Trump has posted an over $91 million bond as he appeals the $83 million defamation verdict in the E. Jean Carroll case.
The bond source is the federal insurance company, although the details of how much collateral Trump put down are unclear.
The bond is larger than the judgment because the court requires 110% of the bond. Trump argues that the jury award is excessive and should be reduced.
The appeal could take several months or even years to resolve.
And the Fulton County Board of Ethics canceled hearing 2 complaints against Fulton County District Attorney Ronny Willis yesterday. It says it has no jurisdiction over the matter. The board says Willis is an elected state constitutional officer in the judicial branch of state government. It says any ethics complaint against her would be under the exclusive jurisdiction of the State Ethics Commission.
Fulton County residents Stephen Kramer and Gregory Mantell filed the complaints. The pair were independently investigating the district attorney's finances after allegations of misconduct and an alleged improper relationship were made public early this year. The ongoing saga between former President Donald Trump and New York Attorney General Letitia James continues. The venue this time was a New York City Fire Department's promotion ceremony yesterday. James was booed at the event, with some shouting, "Trump, Trump, Trump."
Oh, come on, we're in a house of God. First, simmer down. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for getting it out of your system.
James was there to honor the New York Fire Department's first African-American woman chaplain.
Despite James urging the crowd to simmer down, some continued booing and chanting Trump during her speech.
Department Chief John Hodgins criticized the crowd's actions, saying the ceremony should focus on honoring promoted members without distractions.
James filed a lawsuit last year against former President Trump. It alleged he committed fraud and inflated the value of his assets.
Last month's ruling barred the former president from doing business in New York for 3 years and fined him over $350 million. And Republicans lose an absentee voting challenge. An appeals court yesterday dismissed a legal challenge to declare New York's Early Mail Voter Act unconstitutional. A panel of judges with the appellate division of the state Supreme Court issued the ruling.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed the New York Early Mail Voter Act in September.
It expands the state's absentee voting laws, allowing all voters to cast their ballots by mail during the early voting period.
Before that, voters could only vote by mail under certain conditions, such as illness, travel, or disability.
And staying on voting, a Nevada judge upheld a ballot initiative to require voters to show ID.
The Wednesday ruling was in response to a lawsuit challenging the initiative.
If the initiative succeeds, voters would need a current photo ID or one expired for less than 4 years.
Voters would also have to include either the last 4 digits of their driver's license number, social security number, or a number provided by the clerk when the voter registers. An upcoming Biden fundraiser in New York City will include former Presidents Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. TV late-night host Stephen Colbert will moderate.
A tweet from Obama promotes a contest for the event to be held Thursday, March 28th. Organizers also promise special guests to be announced. And a 21-year-old college junior won the GOP primary against incumbent state representative George Cleveland in North Carolina. Wyatt Gable is also feeling good about his chances in November, being in a typically red district. Here's Gables describing his platform priorities on Fox News.
Big three things, focusing on education, like simple things, home economics, shop, carpentry, so students prepared. The Chinese Communist Party owns thousands of acres in North Carolina, so I want to use eminent domain to buy that all back. And then just smart spending.
Gable says an email he sent to his state representative during the COVID pandemic on the lockdowns and loss of freedoms inspired him to run. He never got a reply and says he didn't want anyone else to feel that way.
The young politician hopes that other young people will be inspired to join the GOP and perhaps run themselves.
Gable will square off against Democratic candidate Carmen Spicer in the November general election. Coming up, cleared to fly. V-22 Osprey aircraft get the green light for flight after several fatal crashes. Who that affects and when flights will resume.
Former White House physician turned Congressman Ronny Jackson was demoted by the Navy in 2022. More details from a Pentagon watchdog investigation. More in just a moment, here on NTD News Today.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skip meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. You know, I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay," and I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org. Working together, we can end hunger in America.
Is deep sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Greener, healthier, and more effective. Visit puritang.com to learn more.
Hi, I'm Kelly Wright. We thank you for joining us and watching America's Hope here on NTD News. Bottom line is, I know you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but let's give you some good news in the midst of the bad news. Watch us nightly, right here on NTD News, for a full dose of America's Hope.
Polls show immigration is the #1 concern for many Americans right now. President Biden addressed the crisis at the southern border last night at his State of the Union address.
That's as Republicans pressured Biden, calling on him to, quote, say her name. NTD's Arian Pastar joins us now live from the southern border. Arian, good to see you. How did Biden handle the issue of immigration last night?
Hey, good to see you guys too. It's Friday. I hope you had a great week so far. So yeah, Biden, he did talk about immigration at the State of the Union, but I think nothing really surprising, nothing too shocking there. He once again called on Republicans to pass a recent border funding bill. The Senate already passed the bill, but the House is not picking it up. Let's take a look at what Biden said about that.
This bill would save lives and bring order to the border. It will also give me and any new president new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming.
Now, critics of this bill say that it would just allocate a bunch of money here to the border, but that it wouldn't do much. They argue that Biden could shut down the border right now if he wanted to. They say he would just have to enforce immigration laws already on the books. Right, guys, now one interesting incident took place last night regarding Laken Riley, the nursing student allegedly killed by an illegal immigrant. So ahead of the State of the Union, Republicans pressured Biden, saying he should talk about her death. And during his speech, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene threw a badge onto the stage, and the badge stated, say her name. Let's take a look at what followed after that.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
Now, you just heard Biden calling the suspect an illegal, and multiple Democrats actually criticized him for that after the speech. They say he shouldn't have used a term like that. Now, also yesterday, the House passed the Laken Riley Act. The bill would make it so that ICE has to detain illegal immigrants who've been charged with theft or shoplifting. And right after the bill was passed yesterday, NTD spoke with Congressman Mike Collins. He represents the district in which Riley was killed, and he introduced the act named after her. Let's take a look at what he told us.
This fellow that murdered her had been cited 3 or 4 days earlier for shoplifting. And if we'd had this law passed back then, they could have contacted ICE. ICE could have came in and detained him and deported this person. Thus, Laken Riley would be with us today. The third thing it does.
Now, some people are pointing out that 170 Democrats voted against that bill. Republicans are, of course, criticizing Democrats for that, but also people who don't work in politics. Elon Musk, for example, tweeted asking, isn't it odd to vote against a bill that would deport illegal immigrants who committed a crime? That's what he said. But Democrats argue that the bill is too strict. They say that just because someone has been charged with a crime doesn't mean that person committed the crime. Well, guys, that's it from the border. That's it from me. Back to you, and I hope you have an amazing weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arian. Happy Friday. Thanks for your reporting live from the southern border again. I know you've been there for a few days now. Appreciate it. Former Congressman George Santos announced yesterday that he is running for Congress again. He was expelled from the House last year and is facing federal charges. Santos made the announcement during President Biden's State of the Union address, which he attended. Santos said on X that he would challenge Republican Nick LaLota for New York's 1st District.
Congressman LaLota responded to the announcement, calling Santos a pathological liar who stole an election. Santos was kicked out of Congress last year after being charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and making false statements. The U.S. Senate voted Thursday to extend and expand funding for victims of radiation exposure. GOP Senator Josh Hawley has been pushing to re-up the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, or RECA, since last year. It compensates Americans who may have developed cancer or other diseases after being exposed to radiation from atomic weapons testing or uranium mining.
First enacted in 1990, the legislation is set to expire in June. Hawley has said he wanted to see how several candidates for Senate GOP leader vote on the package as he weighs who to support as majority leader.
The two top contenders, Senators John Cornyn and John Thune, both voted no. It's unknown when or if House Speaker Mike Johnson will bring the legislation to the House floor.
A United Airlines jet headed for Japan made an emergency landing in Los Angeles yesterday. The jetliner lost a tire shortly after taking off from San Francisco. Video shows the plane losing one of the 6 tires on its left side just seconds after takeoff. The tire landed in an employee parking lot at San Francisco International Airport. It then smashed into a car, shattering its back window and broke through a fence. It finally came to a stop in a neighboring parking lot.
The airline said the Boeing 777 is designed to land safely with missing or damaged tires. After the landing, the plane was towed away. United said it would move passengers to a different plane or for the rest of their trip to Japan.
The flight carried 235 passengers and a crew of 14. An airport spokesman said no one was injured. The Federal Aviation Administration will investigate the incident.
Ready for takeoff, the U.S. military announced today that V-22 Osprey aircraft are cleared for flight. The grounding order was imposed after several fatal crashes. Naval Air Systems Command grounded the Osprey fleet over 3 months ago. This followed a fatal crash in November that killed 8 Special Operations airmen. It was the 4th deadly incident in less than 2 years.
The Air Force, Marine Corps, and Navy are expected to resume flying the aircraft over the next several weeks.
Military officials said Wednesday the Osprey are safe to fly following an investigation, but they provided few details about what caused the aircraft to go down. It is unclear if the fleet will be subject to any operation limitations.
The Washington Post reporting that the Navy demoted Congressman Ronny Jackson in 2022 after the release of a blistering report from the Defense Department about his conduct while serving as White House physician. According to the DoD Inspector General, Jackson was accused of drinking on the job, acting inappropriately, and frequently screaming at subordinates. When Jackson retired in 2019, he was a 1-star Rear Admiral.
The demotion dropped him down to captain, according to a pair of U.S. officials. Jackson was a top White House doctor under Presidents Obama and Trump.
He now serves as a Republican member of the House of Representatives from Texas and sits on the House Armed Services Committee.
When the DoD report came out in 2021, Jackson responded by calling it a politically motivated attack.
Federal investigators have an update on possible causes of the 2021 condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. 93 people died under a mountain of rubble when the building came down in June 2021. Investigators identified hundreds of possible points of failure in the building.
They said that when the towers were finished in 1981, the structural design wasn't up to code, particularly the pool deck and tower columns. Both of those are possible causes of the disaster.
According to investigators, the deck collapsed at least 4 minutes before the rest of the building. The columns supporting the tower's southern edge could have also failed, triggering the collapse.
Investigators are still narrowing down about a dozen theories. Their final report is expected next year.
Trump-endorsed candidate Michael Whatley has been elected as the new chair of the Republican National Committee. He took over the gavel from Ronna McDaniel at the committee's spring meeting today.
The committee also appointed Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, as the co-chair.
The decision follows Trump's strong performance in the Super Tuesday primaries and the withdrawal of his last rival, Nikki Haley, for the nomination.
The former president has also pushed for 2 senior advisors, Chris Lascivia and James Blair, to fill key positions in the RNC.
According to leaked files from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH, doctors admit in internal discussions that some children who receive life-altering cross-sex procedures are too young to give informed consent. WPATH describes itself as an organization dedicated to treating gender dysphoria. It's advocated for the use of puberty blockers and other cross-sex surgeries and hormones. The files were published this week by nonprofit Environmental Progress. For analysis, earlier I spoke with Colin Wright, an evolutionary biologist and founding editor of Reality's Last Stand. Colin, thanks for being with us. Break down for us what the leaked WPATH files reveal.
So WPATH is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. They have a reputation for sort of being the leading scientific and medical organization devoted to transgender healthcare. And they're sort of globally recognized as being at the forefront of gender medicine. But the WPATH files, they demonstrate that its approach to medicine, rather than being based in science and evidence-based, is really consumer-driven, pseudoscientific, and the members of WPATH are engaged in political activism instead of science. They're performing extreme sterilizing body modification procedures on children and adolescents, even adults. And I hesitate to even call it a experiment, because as a scientist, when we do experiments, we're actually gathering data. They do not track the outcomes of patients whatsoever. What this really showed, though, is that the internal communications have a vast disparity with sort of their public-facing, confident statements about the evidence-based, how scientific they are, how good the evidence is for all these procedures. But when you look behind the scenes, behind the curtains in their private communications, they're expressing severe doubts, and they're essentially just making things up as they go along.
You talked about the communications with these files from WPATH. Can you elaborate more on that for us?
Yeah, I think one of the most shocking things that I saw was them talking about the complete inability to actually get informed consent from their young patients, because their patients have, a lot of them haven't even, they say in the files, haven't even had their first biology course ever. And so they do not know how hormones actually act on their body. They don't know that if they take puberty blockers before it, and then they take cross-sex hormones, it will permanently sterilize them for life. And so there's this disparity between, what WPATH is saying, where they say that kids can give informed consent, kids know who they are. And then in the behind the scenes, they're saying, well, there's actually no way that they can give informed consent because they're completely ignorant of basic biology. And then there's other crazy things like kids presenting with dissociative identity disorder, which is, this idea that you have multiple individual personalities, and them claiming that you need to get something like informed consent from each of their alter personalities independently before you can give these kids cross-sex hormones. This is just pure pseudoscience in and out, but it's being presented as cutting-edge, gender-affirming, life-saving care.
Now, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling shared the WPATH files on X and said, "What's happening to these minors will go down as one of the worst medical scandals in history." And Elon Musk commented back saying, "It will." Do you see a shift happening in the mainstream culture here because of information like this coming to light?
I do see a major shift. A lot of the individual details in the WPATH had been known before, but they've been released sort of one thing at a time, where they didn't make all the headlines all at once. There were new things in WPATH files for sure, things that verified a lot of what we all suspected. But a big news story like this, where everything is just tied in a bow in the WPATH files, it's pretty groundbreaking. I think it's going to wake a lot of people up into the radical activist nature that WPATH actually is, rather than being led by evidence and reason and science, and abiding by the medical principle to do no harm. So yeah, I do think that this is a pivotal moment.
All right, Colin Wright, evolutionary biologist, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
And now we have NTD's Dave Martin with some historical analysis on how the State of the Union address could affect President Biden's approval rating.
Dave, what have you got for us today?
Thanks, guys. President Biden's latest job approval rating had him at just at 38%, according to Gallup. That's pretty low. That's actually just above the 37% he was at several times last year as the lowest of his administration. But he had an audience last night to tout some of the highlights of his administration and maybe see if that would make a difference. Now, we won't know if his State of the Union speech immediately helped him out, but we can look back at history. Let's actually start, though, with Donald Trump. Now, here is Donald Trump's job approval rating before and after his State of the Union address. Look at in 2019. Before the State of the Union address, 37% approval rating. It actually went up to 44% in his next polling. In 2020, it was actually much different, though. 49% before, 49% afterwards. Now, it should be noted in 2019, there was a government shutdown that ended on January 25th that might have actually skewed these results. Meanwhile, in 2020, this 49% here, that is the actually highest of his administration. Now, how about Biden? Because of course, this is not his first ever State of the Union address. Let's look back at his last two. Biden's job approval rating State of the Union address, he gave one on March 1st, 2022. As you can see, right before it was 41%, right after it's 42%. He also gave one February 7, 2023, 41% job approval rating before, 42% afterwards. So you can see it really didn't seem to make much of a difference for him on those. And actually, his job approval rating has not been above 43% since September of 2021. That's quite a while. Now, as for yesterday, CNN reported that 6 in 10 Americans who watched it had a positive reaction, though they cautioned that these polls can be disproportionate, as those who watch it are usually of the same party, so it could be a friendly score with a friendly audience. Now, one president who saw maybe the biggest bump ever after a State of the Union address was Bill Clinton back in 1998. His approval rating went from 59% to 69%. That 10-point jump is the biggest ever. Now, amazingly, this was just after the Monica Lewinsky scandal had just erupted, and he was staring at a possible impeachment. But Clinton, of course, was a very gifted speaker. Now, that 10-point jump, as I mentioned, was the biggest ever. It's not in line with history. Presidents on average saw a bump of just 0.2% after these State of the Union addresses. And actually, you were just as likely to see your approval rating go up as it were to go down. Now, shifting gears to look at the race of who might be giving the State of the Union address next year, let's take a look at Donald Trump in the GOP race. Now, Trump has no competitors left, but he still has to get to the magic number of 1,215 delegates to win the GOP nomination. He's getting very close, too. Let's take a look at this calendar here. Trump, 1,031 delegates won. Now, the next election is actually today, American Samoa. There's 9 delegates up for grabs there. Followed by next Tuesday, March 12th, 4 state elections. You've got Georgia, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Washington with 161 delegates are up for grabs then. Then a week from today, Northern Mariana Islands, 9 delegates there, followed by Guam the very next day, 9 delegates up for grabs there. Then a week from Tuesday, you've got 5 state elections going on. Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Kansas, and Ohio with 350 delegates are up for grabs. He should be able to mathematically clinch it that night, and we will be right here to air it for you then. That's all I've got for you now. So back to you guys at the desk.
All right. Dave Martin, thank you for that wonderful presentation and breaking down the historical analysis. It'll be interesting to see what the ratings will be like soon.
And up ahead, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 mysteriously vanished 10 years ago today. Families are still holding out hope for answers.
A maritime aid corridor is expected to start operating between Cyprus and Gaza this weekend. The European Union says the first run of food and aid could be heading to the Palestinian enclave today. We'll have the details soon when we return.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shenyun.
We all know that words have power. They set things in motion and make us happy or sad. But there's one word that stands out because when people say it, lives are changed.
It's not a big word.
It's itsy bitsy. It's only 3 little letters.
But when you say it,
the life of a kid like me can be changed. So, what is this special word? It may surprise you.
it's yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes to becoming a monthly supporter of Shriners Hospitals for Children.
That's right. Your monthly support allows the doctors and nurses at Shriners Hospitals for Children to give the most amazing care anywhere and change the lives of kids like me.
And me.
And me. Because people like you have said yes. Now I can play football.
And I can play catch.
and I can walk.
So what do you say? Will you say yes right now?
It's so easy.
All you have to do is pick up the phone or go to loveshriners.org right now and say yes. When you say yes to giving just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of all the kids you're helping every day. My life is filled with possibility because of the monthly support of people just like you who called the number on your screen and said yes.
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 Your yes is making a difference in my life and the lives of so many other kids like me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to say yes right away.
We're in the nation's capital asking the important questions so that you're in the know. Join us daily, Monday through Friday, on the Capitol Report on NTD News.
A U.S. Army soldier in Fort Campbell, Kentucky faces 6 federal counts, including conspiracy and bribery. A grand jury indicted him yesterday for allegedly selling top-secret national defense information to someone from China.
Prosecutors accuse intelligence analyst Corbin Schultz of a multi-year conspiracy to illegally exploit his access to classified information for cash. The indictment claims Schultz' conspirator tasked him with gathering information on U.S. plans to respond to a military attack on Taiwan. Along with sensitive data and information on the F-22 stealth fighter jet, the Whiskey combat rescue helicopter, the HIMARS rocket system, and intercontinental ballistic missiles.
The indictment alleges Schultz took around $42,000 in 14 payments from a conspirator that claimed to live in Hong Kong. Prosecutors say Schultz started disclosing documents, maps, notes, photographs, and plans related to national defense in June 2022. And a bipartisan push from the U.S. against genocide in China's Xinjiang region, or East Turkestan, as Uyghurs call their home. Lawmakers are asking the State Department to issue a do not travel notice for the region. In a joint letter to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Congressman Chris Smith and Senator Jeff Merkley wrote, "Tourism only serves to whitewash these atrocities, serving the interests of the Chinese Communist Party and government."
Over 1 million ethnic minority Uyghurs in Xinjiang have been subjected to mass detention, torture, and forced labor.
The U.S. government has labeled it a genocide, and the United Nations considers it a crime against humanity.
The lawmakers also sent letters to 3 private travel companies providing trips in Xinjiang, including visits to mosques. The letter points out these mosques are off limits to Uyghurs to practice their faith, but are being used for tourism.
And Hong Kong is moving to enact harsher penalties against pro-democracy politicians, activists, and anyone deemed to be colluding with so-called foreign forces.
Lawmakers published their draft of a new national security law today. The bill includes penalties of up to life in prison for treason, insurrection, and sabotage. It also proposes 20 years in jail for espionage and 10 years for crimes linked to state secrets and sedition. The bill also proposes extending police detention for individuals arrested without charge from 48 hours to 14 days.
Human rights and media advocacy groups had called for sedition to be scrapped for its potential to silence journalists and freedom of expression. The European Union says it has grave concerns over the sweeping provisions in the bill and its extraterritorial reach. The U.S. has also expressed concern over the bill's broad and vague definitions of state secrets and external interference.
The bill's definition of state secrets includes military, security, and diplomatic secrets, as well as classified social, economic, and technological information involving the Chinese Communist Party and Hong Kong.
Hong Kong leader John Lee has urged lawmakers to fast-track the bill at full speed. Several members of the largely pro-Beijing body said they expect the bill to become law before mid-April.
10 years after the mysterious disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, families of Chinese passengers on the plane are still seeking the truth about what happened. They protested today at the entrance to the Malaysian embassy in Beijing.
Our hope is that if he is alive, we need to see him in person. If he is dead, we need to see his body. What happened to the plane? Where did it go? Find the plane as soon as possible.
Malaysia says it's willing to reopen an investigation if compelling new evidence emerges.
Flight MH370 disappeared on the way from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing 10 years ago on March 8th, with 239 people on board.
What happened to the flight has become one of the world's greatest aviation mysteries. And now for a shift in gears, we have some short headlines from Italy and other European countries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she expects a maritime aid corridor to start operating between Cyprus and Gaza this weekend.
The EU chief said a pilot run of food aid could be leaving Cyprus as early as today. A ship belonging to Spain's Open Arms will make the voyage to test the sea corridor.
Von der Leyen said the EU, the US, the United Arab Emirates, and others involved countries are launching the sea corridor to deliver large quantities of aid.
She called the situation in Gaza a humanitarian catastrophe.
The U.S. Embassy in Russia says extremists have imminent plans for an attack in Moscow. The embassy said people should avoid concerts and crowds and be aware of their surroundings.
The warning came hours after Russian security services said they foiled an ISIS plot to attack a synagogue. Russia's Federal Security Service said an ISIS cell was operating in Russia's Kaluga region south of Moscow. The security service says the cell is part of the Afghan arm of the terror group.
The U.S. Embassy gave no further details about the nature of the threat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced Thursday the appointment of a former top general as Ukraine's ambassador to the UK.
Valery Zaluzhny is widely seen as a national hero for overseeing Ukraine's war effort throughout Russia's full-scale invasion.
Zelenskyy made the announcement in his nightly video address following a meeting with the UK's Secretary of Defense. The Ukrainian president also congratulated Sweden on its official entry into NATO.
Ukraine has not had an ambassador in Britain since July 2023.
Today, I also approved the candidate for the position of our country's ambassador to the UK. General Valery Zaluzhny told me that this is the direction he would like to take: diplomacy. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine sent a corresponding request for agreement. Our alliance with Britain should only get stronger.
A new trial began today for two American men accused of killing an Italian plainclothes police officer during a botched sting operation. Italy's highest court ordered a new trial last year. It ruled that their guilt hadn't been proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Finnegan Lee Elder and Gabriel Nataliorth were teenagers at the time of the 2019 murder. The friends from California were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The sentences were reduced to 24 years for Elder and 22 years for Nataliorth on appeal.
Prosecutors alleged Elder stabbed the officer 11 times after trying to buy drugs from an informant. Nataliorth allegedly helped him hide the knife in their hotel room. Coming up, a centuries-old Polish dance wins a spot on UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. Find out more about the Polonaise after the break.
We are only 80 years removed from countries that killed 60 to 70 million people intentionally. And we have people being like, oh, it can't happen here. Yeah, it can, and it might.
These people, they're not interested in the facts. They're not interested in anything except crushing people that are in their way.
There needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members.
A strong church can stop this.
We all know that words have power.
They set things in motion.
And make us happy or sad.
But there's one word that stands out because when people say it, lives are changed.
It's not a big word.
It's itsy bitsy.
It's only 3 little letters.
But when you say it,
the life of a kid like me can be changed.
So, what is this special word?
It may surprise you.
It's yes.
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 Yes to becoming a monthly supporter of Shriners Hospitals for Children.
That's right. Your monthly support allows the doctors and nurses at Shriners Hospitals for Children to give the most amazing care anywhere and change the lives of kids like me.
And me.
And me.
Because people like you have said yes. Now I can play football.
And I can play catch.
And I can walk.
So what do you say? Will you say yes right now?
It's so easy.
All you have to do is pick up the phone or go to loveshriners.org right now and say yes. When you say yes to giving just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we'll send you this adorable Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of all the kids you're helping every day. My life is filled with possibility because of the monthly support of people just like you who called the number on your screen and said yes.
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 Your yes is making a difference in my life and the lives of so many other kids like me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving.
Please call or go online now. If operators are busy, call again or go to loveshriners.org to say yes right away.
Hillsdale College is reaching and teaching millions of Americans to pursue truth and defend liberty. But to do that in an even bigger way, we need your help. Your generous support helps educate students from kindergarten to college, all while refusing every penny of government funding, even indirect funding like student loans or grants. And your dedicated giving allows us to teach millions of Americans through our free online courses. You make all the difference. Give a gift today. Just use this link.
For the day's top headlines and the news you need to know, tune in right here to NTD Evening News.
A centuries-old Polish dance has earned a place on UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. The stately style was performed at aristocratic balls and village festivals and even inspired famous composers. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on the movements.
This is the Polonaise, a traditional Polish dance that dates back to the 18th century. The work of Polish composer Frédéric Chopin gave the style international recognition. In December, it was added to the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage.
Undoubtedly, the Polonaise merits being on the UNESCO list of World Heritage because it is a dance with not only Polish, but an international tradition. It is a widely recognized ballroom dance, but an unusual dance because it has actually opened most court balls in European culture since the early 18th century.
This performing group is from Warsaw University's Dance Theater. The dancers describe what gives the Polonaise its distinctive character.
The most important thing in Polonaise is that the whole group can jointly dance the choreography, and among the personal features, the most important are the dignity of men and the ethereal nature of women.
It has an exceptional soul, and one can express emotions in an exceptional way. On one hand, it is very serious, but on the other hand, the eyes and looking at the partner are very important, bringing us very close in the dance.
Polonaise has become the main style of high school dances. Students rehearse it for days to perfect their performance.
We are all united in this dance. It is this exceptional moment because there happens to be conflicts among classmates. Not everyone gets along with the others, but we immerse in music, dance together. It is a magical moment for us all.
On national holidays or local occasions, citizens are invited to dance in the streets.
It is also an initiative that brings people together, and I think that nowadays it is very important to have such a community. Well, I think it's worth it to cultivate this tradition.
It is a dance that is really very simple, with beautiful music and beautiful costumes. It is worth a try.
So go for it. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Looks like fun too, but that's all we have today.
Thank you for tuning in.
Feel free to reach out to us with news tips and feedback at news.today@ntd.com.
And be sure to stick around for NTD Newsroom at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll cover more stories from the U.S. and around the world.